Good morning, everyone. This slide provides a foundational understanding of the current global financial landscape, dominated by the hegemony of the US dollar. For decades, the US dollar has stood as the undisputed primary reserve currency for central banks worldwide, meaning a significant portion of international financial assets are denominated in dollars. This pervasive role extends deeply into international trade, where the majority of global transactions, particularly in crucial commodities like oil, are priced and settled in dollars. Furthermore, the US dollar centrality is intertwined with the SWIFT system, a global network that facilitates interbank financial transactions, granting the United States unparalleled financial leverage and the ability to impose powerful economic sanctions. This entrenched position has provided the U.S. with significant economic and geopolitical advantages, enabling lower borrowing costs, reduced exchange rate risks, and a substantial degree of influence over global financial stability. Understanding this established order is crucial as we explore potential shifts. Japan stands as the world's third-largest economy, a testament to its formidable GDP and highly industrialized base. This economic might is significantly anchored by Tokyo, which functions as a preeminent global financial hub. The city hosts the Tokyo Stock Exchange, one of the world's largest, alongside a concentration of leading international financial institutions, facilitating vast capital flows and investment. Furthermore, Japan is a major global investor and a leader in high-tech exports, consistently driving innovation in sectors from robotics to advanced materials. This profound economic influence, coupled with a stable currency and robust financial infrastructure, solidifies Japan's critical role in the international economic landscape, positioning it as a pivotal player in any potential shifts within the global financial order. China's economic influence is undeniable, commanding the world's second-largest economy, deeply integrated into global trade and manufacturing supply chains. This formidable economic base provides the foundation for its ambitions in the digital financial sphere. Beijing has aggressively developed and piloted the digital yuan, or ECNY, aiming to enhance domestic financial efficiency and establish greater monetary sovereignty. The ECNY is not merely a technological upgrade. It represents a strategic move to potentially reshape global financial transactions. Through initiatives like the Belt and Road, the digital yuan could facilitate cross-border trade, offering an alternative to traditional Western-dominated payment systems. This parallel financial infrastructure development positions China to challenge existing currency hegemonies and foster a more multipolar global financial landscape, potentially reducing the reliance on the US dollar for international settlements. Russia's economic structure is profoundly resource-dependent, with energy exports, primarily oil and natural gas, forming the bedrock of its national revenue. This reliance has historically intertwined its economy with global commodity markets, often denominated in US dollars. However, in response to escalating international sanctions, Russia has significantly accelerated its strategic shift towards de-dollarization. This initiative aims to reduce its vulnerability to Western financial leverage by minimizing the use of the US dollar in its international transactions. The core strategy involves actively promoting trade settlements in national currencies, such as the Russian ruble and Chinese yuan, and developing robust alternative payment systems that bypass traditional dollar-centric financial infrastructure. This move is not merely reactive. It represents a long-term goal to diversify its economic partnerships and fortify its financial sovereignty, particularly strengthening its economic alignment with nations like China. Japan's potential engagement in reshaping global currency structures with China and Russia stems from a complex interplay of economic necessity and geopolitical strategy, moving beyond its historical reliance on US-centric finance. Firstly, the imperative for diversification of foreign exchange reserves is paramount. An over-concentration in any single currency, particularly amidst global economic volatility and geopolitical tensions, presents significant risk. Japan, like many nations, seeks to mitigate this by exploring alternatives, safeguarding its economic stability. Secondly, such engagement facilitates deeper regional economic integration. By fostering direct currency initiatives and reducing dependency on third-party financial systems, Japan can streamline trade and investment with its major Asian partners, boosting regional prosperity and creating a more resilient intra-Asian economic bloc. Finally, this strategic shift offers Japan enhanced geopolitical leverage and financial autonomy. In an increasingly multipolar world, diversifying its financial relationships allows Japan greater flexibility in its foreign policy and economic decision-making, positioning it as a more independent actor capable of navigating complex global dynamics with increased strategic depth. China's pursuit of alternatives to the existing financial architecture is driven by several strategic imperatives. Primarily, the nation seeks to reduce its substantial reliance on the US dollar, a dependency that exposes it to the direct and indirect pressures of US economic policy and potential sanctions. This vulnerability underscores the imperative for greater financial autonomy. Secondly, China aims to diminish its exposure to the US-dominated SWIFT system, viewing it as a critical instrument of American financial influence. Developing independent payment infrastructure enhances its resilience against external leverage. Finally, a cornerstone of this strategy is the systematic internationalization of the renminbi. By promoting its currency for trade and investment globally, China endeavors to foster a more multipolar financial system, thereby challenging the long-standing financial hegemony of the US dollar and establishing its own significant global financial footprint. Russia's strong demand for changes in global currency dynamics is fundamentally driven by the extensive Western sanctions imposed following geopolitical events. These sanctions, specifically targeting Russia's financial sector, have severely restricted its access to international markets, key currencies, and crucial financial mechanisms. The most significant measure, the exclusion of several Russian banks from the SWIFT interbank messaging system, exposed a critical vulnerability, compelling Russia to actively seek and develop independent financial infrastructure. Furthermore, the freezing of Russian central bank assets by Western nations underscored the imperative for de-dollarization and reducing dependence on financial systems controlled by what Russia perceives as hostile powers. Consequently, Russia is strategically pursuing financial autonomy, advocating for alternative payment systems, promoting trade in national currencies, and actively working towards a multipolar global financial architecture that diminishes the influence of the US dollar and Western financial institutions. This shift is a direct response to perceived weaponization of finance and aims to establish a more resilient and independent economic future. Global reserve currencies are not static entities. Their prominence has shifted dramatically throughout history, reflecting geopolitical power and economic influence. From the 17th to 18th centuries, the Dutch guilder emerged as a significant international currency, facilitating the vast trade networks of the Dutch Empire. This was subsequently eclipsed by the British pound sterling, which ascended to global dominance during the 19th and early 20th centuries, underpinned by the Industrial Revolution and the vast reach of the British Empire. Following two world wars and the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, the United States dollar solidified its position as the world's primary reserve currency, a status it has maintained for over 70 years. However, history teaches us that no currency's reign is permanent, and the economic landscape is always evolving, setting the stage for potential future shifts. Bilateral swap lines represent direct currency exchange agreements established between central banks. Within a potential trilateral framework involving Japan, China, and Russia, these lines would facilitate the direct exchange of their respective national currencies, such as Japanese yen for Chinese yuan, Japanese yen for Russian ruble, and Chinese yuan for Russian ruble. This mechanism is crucial for providing liquidity in local currencies, thereby significantly reducing the reliance on the US dollar for cross-border trade, investment, and financial transactions among the three nations. By bypassing the dollar, these swap lines enhance financial stability, mitigate foreign exchange risks, and strategically support the development of an independent trade and payment settlement system within the bloc. They serve as a foundational step towards fostering deeper economic integration and a more diversified global currency landscape. Central bank digital currency interoperability, particularly between the Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, and Russian ruble, represents a pivotal shift in global finance. This concept involves establishing seamless, direct transaction pathways between sovereign digital currencies, bypassing reliance on conventional correspondent banking networks and the SWIFT system. The technical frameworks for achieving this interoperability would involve developing common standards for atomic settlement, ensuring secure and instant cross-border payments. This standardization aims to minimize transaction costs, reduce settlement times, and mitigate foreign exchange risks inherent in traditional systems. Strategically, a trilateral CBDC interoperability framework could create an independent financial ecosystem. This system would facilitate more efficient trade and investment flows among Japan, China, and Russia, strengthening their economic ties and offering an alternative to the prevailing dollar-centric financial architecture. Such a development could reshape global payment paradigms and foster new geopolitical alignments in the international monetary system. This slide explores the profound implications of commodity-backed settlements, a critical component of any significant shift in global currency dynamics. This approach entails moving away from traditional fiat-based systems, where currency value is purely state-decreed, towards transactions underpinned by tangible, valuable assets. Specifically, this involves leveraging essential global resources such as crude oil and natural gas, critical rare earth minerals, and staple agricultural products for international trade settlements. Such a system offers an intrinsic hedge against inflation and geopolitical volatility, as the value of the settlement is directly tied to a physical good rather than a fluctuating currency. For nations like Japan, China, and Russia, who possess significant production capabilities or critical market demand for these commodities, this strategy could establish a robust, alternative financial architecture. This framework would operate independently of existing Western-dominated currency systems, offering a pathway to greater economic sovereignty and stability within their trade blocs. The emphasis here is on creating a system where the foundational value is indisputable, fostering trust and predictability in cross-border transactions. Japan's strategic calculus necessitates a meticulous evaluation of its geopolitical positioning. The nation must carefully balance its established alliances with Western economies against the emerging opportunities presented by a new economic architecture, potentially involving China and Russia. This complex assessment requires weighing the substantial economic benefits of engaging with alternative currency blocs, such as enhanced trade and investment diversification, against the potential security implications and diplomatic challenges this shift might entail. Ultimately, Japan's decisions in this arena will not only define its future global standing, but also significantly influence the evolution of the international financial system and the distribution of currency power. The internationalization of the renminbi faces inherent challenges, primarily its existing capital controls. Overcoming these restrictions is critical for its broader global acceptance. One strategic approach involves the expansion of bilateral currency swap agreements and direct trade settlement mechanisms between key economies, like Japan, China, and Russia. This directly reduces reliance on third-party currencies, mitigating the immediate impact of capital account convertibility issues. Furthermore, the aggressive advancement of the digital yuan, or ECNY, for cross-border transactions offers a novel solution. The ECNY provides a programmable and traceable platform, allowing for more granular control over capital flows while simultaneously facilitating efficient and secure international trade and investment. Lastly, the establishment and enhancement of offshore renminbi financial hubs and specialized free trade zones are essential. These zones create controlled environments for renminbi-denominated transactions and investment, fostering liquidity pools outside the direct purview of mainland capital account regulations. Collectively, these initiatives provide pragmatic pathways to enhance the renminbi's global utility and acceptance, even as its full capital account liberalization progresses. Examining Russia's economic posture reveals a paradox of remarkable resilience coupled with constrained global market penetration. Following extensive international sanctions, Russia demonstrated an unexpected capacity for economic stabilization and self-sufficiency. Strategic investments in domestic production, particularly in agriculture and some industrial sectors, have bolstered internal markets and reduced reliance on certain imports. This internal strengthening, however, contrasts sharply with its broader global economic integration. Russia's export profile remains heavily concentrated on raw materials, primarily oil, natural gas, and minerals, limiting the diversification of its trade partnerships and the penetration of its non-commodity goods into global markets. Furthermore, its continued financial isolation from Western banking systems and capital markets presents significant hurdles for broader economic engagement and sustained growth. This dual reality, internal resilience against external limitations, underscores Russia's strategic imperatives to seek alternative financial frameworks and trade alignments, making it a pivotal actor in discussions surrounding a new multipolar currency order. In response to a potential trilateral currency shift, Western nations would enact a multifaceted strategy encompassing diplomatic, economic, and financial countermeasures. Diplomatically, efforts would focus on intensifying international pressure, strengthening existing alliances, and forging new coalitions to isolate the trilateral group politically. Economically, targeted sanctions would be deployed against critical sectors within the involved nations, disrupting supply chains and imposing significant trade restrictions. Financially, countermeasures would prioritize stabilizing global markets, mitigating any de-dollarization impacts, and actively promoting the adoption of robust alternative payment systems and stable reserve assets to safeguard the existing international financial architecture. Market adoption presents significant hurdles for any new currency, particularly one aiming for global prominence. The first key barrier is liquidity. For a currency to be widely accepted, it must be easily convertible into other assets and readily available for transactions across various markets. A lack of liquidity means higher transaction costs, increased volatility, and limited utility, making businesses and individuals hesitant to hold or use it. Secondly, trust is paramount. Global markets, corporations, and everyday consumers must have unwavering confidence in the currency's stability, its issuing authorities, and its long-term viability. Geopolitical factors, economic policies, and perceived risks can erode this trust, preventing widespread acceptance regardless of a currency's theoretical backing. Finally, we face powerful network effects. Existing dominant currencies, primarily the US dollar, benefit from decades of established infrastructure, legal frameworks, and widespread usage in international trade and finance. This entrenched ecosystem creates a substantial barrier to entry, as the collective benefit of using the established currency outweighs the perceived advantages of adopting a new, unproven alternative, making it difficult for any challenger to gain critical mass without a compelling systemic shift. The emergence of institutions such as the BRICS New Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank represents a fundamental shift in global financial architecture. These entities offer alternative financing mechanisms for infrastructure and development, explicitly designed to reduce reliance on the Western-dominated Bretton Woods institutions. By providing capital for critical projects across Asia and other developing regions, they foster financial autonomy and promote economic integration among member states. Critically, these banks facilitate lending and trade in local currencies, directly contributing to the strategic goal of de-dollarization. For Japan, engaging with or leveraging the frameworks established by the BRICS Bank and AIIB presents a strategic opportunity to diversify its financial partnerships, expand its regional influence, and mitigate risks associated with over-reliance on a single reserve currency. This collaboration strengthens a multipolar financial system, paving the way for a more balanced global economic order where a broader basket of currencies plays a significant role in international trade and investment. Our analysis identifies two primary pathways for a shift in global currency dynamics: gradual evolution and disruptive shift. The gradual evolution scenario posits an incremental reduction in reliance on the dominant global reserve currency. This would manifest through the expanded use of local currencies in bilateral trade agreements, fostering greater financial autonomy among participating nations like Japan, China, and Russia. Concurrently, it involves the systematic development and integration of non-dollar denominated cross-border payment and settlement systems, steadily building an alternative financial infrastructure. In contrast, the disruptive shift scenario envisions a more rapid and profound reordering of the global financial architecture. This could be catalyzed by significant geopolitical events or a coordinated strategic decision among key nations. Such a shift might involve the swift introduction of a new multilateral reserve asset, potentially a basket of currencies or a digitally backed commodity standard. This scenario would dramatically accelerate the transition away from existing paradigms, presenting both substantial opportunities and considerable risks. Japan's role is particularly critical within both frameworks. In a gradual evolution, Japan could strategically deepen its economic ties and expand its financial instrument offerings with partners. In a disruptive shift, Japan's advanced economy, technological leadership, and established financial infrastructure position it as a pivotal, potentially leading actor in forging a new global monetary system. Its strategic choices will profoundly influence the trajectory and success of any such transition, balancing traditional alliances with emerging economic opportunities. In conclusion, the potential for Japan, China, and Russia to forge a new currency alliance represents a significant inflection point, accelerating the global shift towards a more multipolar financial system. This convergence, driven by strategic economic interests and a desire for diversified risk management, challenges the long-standing unipolar dominance of the US dollar. Such a realignment would necessitate a fundamental reconsideration of international trade mechanisms, cross-border investment flows, and central bank reserve strategies worldwide. While complex to implement, a successful collaboration could foster greater stability through distributed financial power, offering alternatives to existing frameworks and potentially reducing the vulnerabilities associated with over-reliance on a single currency. This evolving landscape demands vigilance and adaptive strategies from all global economic actors.